Hi, everyone. Yeah, we had a bit of a weird technical thing that just happened there. So we were like, "What is going on?" But I think we're all good now. So welcome,
yes,
welcome to Parkside Live. We are so thankful that you've joined us, and whether you end up watching this live or later, we are so thankful. And we hope that our chat about fear, faith, and change may encourage you as you go through this life that can be full of change.
Yeah. Well, I want to start by sharing a story. For a lot of my life, I've been involved with youth work, some of it based in schools, some of it based out of churches, some of it doing street work, some of it in accommodation centres. And a while ago, I just had a sense that my time was done there, that it was time to move into something new. And as I kind of experienced that moment, I was very uncertain. It was an area that I was comfortable in. I'd actually run training workshops for other people in that area. And I felt that I was competent at it, competent enough to move between organisations and implement new systems in new organisations. And so the realisation that had come to an end and it was time to step into something new, that meant that I had to work out what the next step was. I wasn't really sure what that was, and it was something that we kind of worked through a little bit together. And it also meant that I didn't really know who I was or how I was going to perform in that new part of my life. And that included generating income for our family. That included making a decision on what to do, on where to go. So there was a lot of change in that, a lot of uncertainty. And in some moments, actually, it was quite difficult to make some of those decisions. It was a process that led me to realise, no, I think my time here is done. There was a few opportunities with other employers, and I just thought, no, that's not for me. And as we talk about fear and faith and change, or fear, faith and transition, you, as you're watching this, may be in a similar point in your life where you are going through some kind of transition. And I think that's a very natural part of our experience as human beings. And it doesn't really matter how you see yourself. It doesn't really matter what you believe. It's a part of being a human being. Someone has once said, the only constant in life is change. I don't know, do you feel like certainly you've gone through significant changes in your life. Like, is there a moment that comes to mind now that you could just share in brief?
It's interesting. Like, two things come straight to mind, and one is good and one's not so good, because sometimes change can be scary and be like uncertain.
It can.
In a difficult and hard way. Like, I was diagnosed with cancer, and that transition huge. From thinking that everything's okay to not, then having to go through chemo and everything. But I was thinking too then about, it's a joyful change, but it's a change nonetheless. Even just the change from being a single person to getting married. Like
hopefully that's the good one.
It is a good one. It is a good one. But it's a transition still, like, because there are things that you get used to, or even things that you thought always would be. Very happy that these changes came in, but I think that was a learning curve, because as much as we love each other and we've thought about all these things, there are still things that you're learning and growing through and changing in just something that is exciting. But it's a change. So I think that was a big one.
Cool. And if you're watching this with maybe a friend or someone else, now's probably a good time to just press pause and share some of your experiences of going through change, because it is a very human experience. We're going to continue now drawing some inspiration from the scriptures, and we're going to read from just the book of Joshua, Joshua chapter 1, and it says this: after the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua son of Nun, Moses' assistant. He said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land that I'm giving them. I promise you what I promised Moses. Wherever you set foot, you will be on land that I have given you. From the Negev wilderness in the south to the Lebanon mountains in the north, from the Euphrates River in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, including all the land of the Hittites. No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live, for I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail or abandon you. Be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess the land I swore to their ancestors I would give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. Study this book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night, so that you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Now, as we just read through that, I'm aware that we're living in a world now where actually some of the land described in this narrative is right now under conflict. Mm-hmm. And I just want to declare that as a group, we do not see this as any justification for the killing of women and children, for for a genocide to be perpetrated against the Palestinian people. We don't see that at all. No. Matter of fact, when we read through not just this narrative in the scripture, but when you turn to other passages, for example, when Paul writes to the Romans and he refers to Abraham as the father of the Jewish nation, but then he goes on to say that actually God hasn't necessarily chosen this nation. He says, but Abraham is actually the father of all those who have faith. Yep. And I say this because it's important. We're living in a world that is becoming increasingly competitive. And I think one of the ways that we see that competition is that we want to associate ourselves with all these different groups. And we can see that particularly political people are seeking to identify themselves with religious groups. And religious groups are wanting to identify themselves with political parties. And I think that then doesn't really work. Yeah. Because what happens is that the political people seek to divide using religion, and that's been done using a lot of different religions. You know, Hinduism has their extremists, Islam has extremists, and even then you get people who say, I'm a Christian, but then conduct acts of terror. You get people who say, I'm a Christian, and yet argue against refugees. When we see that God's kingdom is a kingdom that says, no, blessed are the poor. God's kingdom is a kingdom that says that when you reach out to people on the margins of your community, you're actually in some way serving this God. And so we just want to put a full stop there and say that's our perspective. We don't have all the answers, but we're certainly saying that this is not a justification for that. And we're not going to go there. And it's not going to be what we're exploring tonight. But what we are going to explore is the experience of a human being in this moment. And so we see this person, Joshua, and he's going through a transition. And we talked about this earlier, but even just reading this passage in brief, like what are some of the changes that you see happening for Joshua?
Well, he was going from one place to another, but the change was he was
crossing the river. Yeah.
But he was like a second in charge or whatever to this guy Moses. Yeah. And so now he's coming up because Moses has died. Now he's in charge. He's going to be leading the people instead of kind of, helping Moses or following. So he's going to be leading. Yeah. 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 So it's a geographic shift. Like he's moving from one country to another, and he doesn't have a
navigation system in his car to show him where to go, and probably, honestly, doesn't really even have a map at this stage. He's going from a land where he's been wandering around finding his way, and now he's going into a new land where there are established cities. He's not sure where. There are river courses. He's not sure how many he's going to have to cross. So there's all these geographic challenges. He's also gone, you used the word second in command. In this particular translation, we talked about an assistant. He's had to step up his game. It doesn't matter what word you use. It's a change in role. He's moving from someone who executes, someone whose responsibility is to do what they're told, to now someone who decides what needs to be done. And if you've ever been in a role change like that, that can be a very stressful transition. Additionally, there's a relationship change here. That Joshua, we'd probably use the word these days, mentor. That while he's been an assistant, it's been a bit more, I think, than a professional relationship. And so this person that Joshua has admired, has been guided by, I've no doubt that Joshua and Moses would have sat down and talked about things. And yet now that relationship is over.
Because so there's a grief there too that he would be going through.
I think so. Hey, and like it's only recent if you, according to the way the narrative is presented. So there's a significant relationship that he's lost. So he's got to find his way without that. There's a role change and there's a geographic change. So he's going through these transitions, and how does he handle that? Well, there's a bit of a hint here. Because if we pick it up, one of the first things that God says here is, and I'm just going to pick it up down here. He says, "Be strong and courageous." But then he says again, a bit further down, "Be strong and courageous." And then he says again a third time, "Be strong and courageous." Now we've got that there 3 times. If someone tells me something twice, I start to get a bit irritated. Yes, I heard you the first time. I don't know how you respond. I mean, I don't know, you might be a bit more patient than me.
Maybe I don't always like being told what to do either, and if someone has to tell me twice.
And yet here, this person is being told 3 times, be strong and courageous. Now,
I think it's got to sink in.
It's got to sink in. What do you think that's about?
Well, I think because it's the important things that God wants Joshua to know and do and be, because God knows what's coming up. He also can see Joshua's heart. Maybe Joshua is already starting to think, I can't do this. Moses could, I can't. Or maybe he's listening to grumblings of people around him who are like, now we've got this dude leading us. So all of those things, and because he was going to have to go into a new territory, I think God was just like, be courageous. Sometimes with us, God might tell us something, we're like, yeah, I get it. And then 2 minutes later, it's like we need to be reminded again. I think it's so that it like sinks in. This is what I'm going to need for this transition, for this journey, for this challenge. Yeah.
So for us, we've got kids, and they're still at the age where they're learning to be safe when they're crossing the road. And so often we will say, wait at the side. Why do we always remind them? Because they're still at an age where they have a tendency to just lurch out impulsively. And so we say, this is what we want because we can see that you're going to go in a different direction. And I read this the same way, that Joshua is being reminded to be strong. He's being reminded to be courageous because he's demonstrating this very natural, very human tendency to be afraid, this very natural tendency to be discouraged. Whenever we go through a transition, I think it is a natural thing to look back and go, I knew what I was doing back in that other job. For me, I know how to do youth work. I don't even know what's next. And so then the unknown can create anxiety. It can create stress, a stress response. And that's not always a bad thing. I think fear keeps us safe. When you're walking through the bush and you almost step on a snake, you jump back. It keeps you safe. If you're looking at your bank account and you're thinking there's not enough there, that fear, that anxiety hopefully spurs you to think, I've got to find a way to generate more income. Like if you're running your own business and you're thinking, man, like the books just aren't working, that fear, that anxiety, that stress you can use to be more creative, to help you, okay, I've got to work this out. I need to speak to someone else. I need to get some good advice. So there's good things there. But there's also an issue with fear. That as we go through life, if we are living in a place of fear, it actually changes our thinking.
Yeah.
That actually, God warns us that change. He says, the Spirit of God is not a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of self-control. And so it's not from God, but it's also changing our thinking from being self-controlled, from thinking confidently and powerfully. And neurologists will tell us that when we are feeling stressed, that our thinking goes to fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
I don't like this situation. I've either got to fight it or I'm going to run away. I'm just going to freeze. That's not when we're at our most creative. No. That's not when we're going to move forward in a loving and a self-controlled way. It actually reduces us as people, reduces our influence, and reduces the way that we see the world. And I think part of that is why we're seeing a rise in people trying to combine religion and nationalism. It's out of fear. We just want to squeeze everything together. And if you're not in our little box, move on. Whereas God actually calls us not into safety, not into comfort, into the unknown. He's going to call us into situations where we will feel frightened, where we will feel discouraged, where we will feel well and at the end of our resource, because it's about God. That the future that God is inviting us into is bigger than I can create, it's bigger than you can create. And as powerful as we are together, it's even bigger than what we can create together. And that's when we know that we have been invited into a transcendent mission, a God-sized calling, because it is beyond our capacities. Don't let fear and discouragement be a condemnation to you. But actually, God gives us the response here. He says, be strong and courageous, not because you have to sit there and think and go, all right, now I'm strong, now I'm courageous. But he says, because I am with you. And as we go...
That's the source of the courage and...
100%. I am with you. And what we read, just even in this passage, is that the God that we are talking about is a God who says, I will not fail you. I will not forsake you. I will be with you. And for some of you, you may have been in these circles for a while. You may have seen incredible things. And yet what God says to Joshua is, all those incredible things that you've seen, and if you know some of the stories, it is miraculous. There are miraculous escapes. There is incredible stories of food being provided where there was no food, of water flowing where there was no water. Joshua's seen all that, but he has not been the person in the point. He hasn't been the person who's had some responsibility for making that happen. He's been the person who's watched, and God says, all those things you've seen, we can do together because I am with you. And so our message tonight is just simple. If you are facing a transition, a change in your life, we want you to know that there is a way through, and that the way of Jesus is not psyching yourself up, but it's actually coming to God and actually laying hold of this promise here. This promise that says, I am with you. I will not fail you. I will not forsake you. you can be strong and courageous because I am with you. Matter of fact, that brings together a verse that a promise that was written to another group of Christians who were going through imprisonment, public mockery, and the Apostle Paul wrote these words: I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And this was another person who was imprisoned for their faith, who was ostracized by his own community because of his faith, a person who was physically beaten. And yet he said, I can keep going on this mission because of who is with me. And I want you to know that that same God, the one who breathed life into this world, is breathing life into your situation. The one who is inviting you into something new is the same God that says, all the things that you've known in the past, forget all that, I am doing something new. And that Jesus says, follow me, come follow me. And so if you are in the middle of a transition, we want to invite you to experience that promise come true for you. If you're stepping into new community, you're finding new causes. And we recognize too that for some of you, what faith means to you is shifting. And all of those moves are something that requires strength, that requires courage. We're going to invite you just simply to say, Jesus, I give you my life. This situation that I'm in, this change that I'm going through, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to give it to you. And I ask that you would give me your life, your strength, your courage. You would give me the faith to believe that you are a God who does not forsake us, that does not fail us, and that you are with me now. And if you're ready to make that choice as you're watching, pray with us right now. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And if you prayed that, then I'm believing that right now you're already experiencing something of the incredible nearness of the Creator of the universe. Something of the strength and the courage of Jesus Christ in your life. We'd love to help you on the next step of your journey, whatever that is. Please drop us a comment or a DM. Or if you're in Southwest Sydney, join us around this very table on a Sunday morning. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.
Bye.